Welcome, everyone. This is Brother Doug. My sister Shoshana, she was just singing Lion of Yehuda, Prince of Peace, and we're about to do a study today called, we're going to be continuing our Torah weekly tabernacle study, and we're going to be starting Genesis, Bereshith, chapter 18. I'll be starting our reading here. I'll be reading from the Aramaic Targum of the version of the Pentateuch, so I'll be using that version. Let me just make sure it's going to be on the shared screen here. All right, here we go. Pentateuchal Targum, and I'll just make sure that it's actually on shared screen because sometimes my shared screen wants to mess up half the time. All right, here we go. All right, click on this here, chapter 18. And it says, "And Yahuwah was revealed to him in the veil." That's interesting. In the veil of Mamre instead of the oak of Mamre. That's kind of interesting. "And he sat in the door of the tent while the day was hot, and he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men stood towards him." So Yahuwah, or possibly could be Yahusha, some believe it's Yahusha, appeared as a mortal man, or he looked like a mortal man, kind of like how the Malachim sometimes appear as humans, take the form of flesh. So this is very interesting here. And he, let's see, it says, 3 men stood towards him, and he saw and ran from the door of the tent to meet them, and worshipped upon the earth, or probably did obeisance would be more correct there. He bowed to the ground, and he said, "Master, if now I have found favor in your eyes, pass not, I pray, from your servant, except now a little water, and wash your feet, or recline under the tree, and take a mouthful of bread, and strengthen your hearts. Afterward you shall pass on, because for this you have come over unto your servant." And he said, "So do as thou hast spoken." And Abram hastened to the tent to Sarah and said, "Make haste," meaning prepare quickly, "with 3 se'im of the flour of meal, mix and make cakes." And to the herd Abram ran and took a calf, tender and tube, and gave to a young man, and he hastened to dress him, and he took butter and milk and the calf which he had prepared and set before them, and he waited upon them under the tree, and they ate. And he said to him, "Where is Sarah your wife?" And he said, "Behold, in the tent." And he said, "Returning, I will return to you according to the time you shall revive," or have life. "And behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son." And Sarah heard in the door of the tent, and it was behind him, and Abraham and Sarah were old and advanced in days, and with Sarah had ceased to be the way of women, basically meaning that naturally the way of women, becoming pregnant, she shouldn't be able to physically become pregnant anymore. And Sarah laughed within herself, saying, "After that I am old shall I have a child, and my master old." And Yahuwah said to Abraham, "Wherefore Sarah laughed, saying, Can it be in truth that I shall bring forth, and I being old? What word is hidden from before Yahuwah? At the time I will return to you, according to the time that you shall revive, and Sarah shall have a son." And Sarah denied, saying, "I did not laugh, or I laughed not." For she was afraid, and he said, "No, but you did laugh." And the men arose there and looked towards the face of Sodom. So now you have the other 2 people that look like mortal men, which we'll see later are actually Malachim. So the other 2 beings that look like human men are actually angels. And Abraham went with them to accompany them, and the men arose there and looked towards the face of Sodom, and Abraham went with them to accompany them. And Yahuwah said, shall I conceal from Abraham what I am doing? So Abraham went with the other two men, and now Yahuwah is contemplating whether he should let Abraham know the true purpose of why he's going there, of why he's going to Sodom. Basically, should I tell Abraham I'm about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? And Abraham shall be indeed a people many and strong, and in him shall all the peoples of the earth be Baruch, because it is manifest before me that he will instruct his children. So, Yahuwah knows, he's all-knowing. He knows what's going to happen in the future. He knows that Abraham's going to obey him. He will instruct his children and the men of his house after him to keep the ways which are right before Yahuwah, to do righteousness and right ruling, that Yahuwah may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken concerning him. And Yahuwah said, the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah, because it is great, the guilt of them is very mighty. I will now see and will rightly rule whether they do according to the report of them which has ascended before me. I will deal with them thoroughly unless they convert. But if they convert, I will not punish. And the men turned away from there and went towards Sodom. And Abraham yet ministered in prayer before Yahuwah. And Abraham approached and said, will you in anger destroy the righteous with the guilty? If perhaps there be 50 righteous within the city, will you in anger destroy and forgive the place for the 50 righteous who are within it? More true are your right rulings than you should do a thing like that to destroy the righteous with the guilty, and that the righteous should be as the guilty. Your right rulings are true. Can the ruler of all the earth but do righteousness? And Yahuwah said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous in the midst of the city, I will spare all the place for their sake. And Abraham answered and said, behold, I have done a great thing to speak before Yahuwah, and I dust and ashes. Perhaps of the 50 righteous there may be wanting 5. Shall all the city perish through 5? And he said, I will not destroy if I find there 40 and 5. So now he keeps going lesser and lesser and lesser. He's kind of, in my opinion, Abraham's kind of pushing himself with Yahuwah. He kind of realizes it too. You'll see later on in this chapter. He kind of realizes that he's kind of overstepping his boundaries here. And he added yet to speak before him and said, perhaps 40 may be found there. And he said, I will make the end on account of the 40. I will not make an end to the count of the 40. And he said, let not the anger of Yahuwah now kindle, and I will speak. So this is how he knows he's definitely pushing it a little bit. Perhaps 30 shall be found there. And he said, I will not make the end if I find there 30. And he said, behold, I have done a great thing to speak before Yahuwah. Perhaps 20 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy for the sake of the 20. And he said, let not now the anger of Yahuwah kindle, and I will speak only this time. Perhaps 10 may be found there. And he said, I will not destroy for the sake of the 10. And the esteem of Yahuwah ascended when he has ceased to speak with Abraham. And Abraham returned to his place. So pretty much as we see here, this is the promise of the seed of Abraham, that he's going to have a son according to the time of life. Yahuwah promised his wife Sarah. His wife Sarah doesn't trust Yahuwah at first because she thinks, she's past the years of childbearing. She doesn't see how it's possible. And Yahuwah, kind of took offense to that. He's like, is anything short for me? In the Masoretic text would be, is my hand too short for anything? To accomplish my purpose, or is there anything that I can't do, basically? So this chapter was about the promise of Abraham having a son with Sarah, and then you see it transitioning to Sodom and Gomorrah, the judgment of Sodom and Gomorrah. So now we're about to get to Sodom and Gomorrah now. And what I found interesting is kind of the narrative in this chapter is similar to the book of Enoch, where Yahuwah says, let me come down, basically come down from my throne, come to the earth, and see if the report of Sodom and Gomorrah is true. It's kind of like what happened in the book of Enoch with the Watchers. He wanted to make sure all the cries of the people up to heaven were true. So I kind of found that a little interesting. See here. So now we're going to read chapter 19 here. And now we get here the concept of the other two men were two of his sons, the sons of the Elohim, angels. So it says, and two angels entered into Sodom in the evening, when it was sunset. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot saw and arose to present himself before them. And he bowed with his face to the earth, and he said, I pray, my masters, to turn aside unto the house of your servant, and lodge, and wash your feet, and rising early, you shall go on your way. And they said, not so, but in the wide place we will lodge. And he was greatly in earnest with them, and they turned aside with him, and entered into his house, and he made them a supper, and dressed unleavened cakes for them. So that's interesting. So he's dressing unleavened cakes. And Abram in the last chapter just gave them regular cakes. That's interesting. For them, and they ate. As yet they had not slept. And the men of the city, the men of Sodom, gathered against the house, from the youth unto the old man, all the people from the extremes. And they cried to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? So, oh boy. This is where we get the phrase sodomite from. Yeah. So these men were what in modern terminology you could say Sodom was pretty much a homosexual country, kind of like what America's turning into. So unfortunately they didn't learn the lesson from Sodom and Gomorrah. Bring them forth to us, and we will know them. So this is interesting. This is kind of I would just like to take a moment to actually cross-reference this story with Jude here, because this is important. This actually shows that there's a little something in common with these men and the Watchers, believe it or not. And Jude kind of speaks on it in the book of Jude here. It says here, let me make sure it's sharing my eSword here. Okay, so I'm going to put that on a shared screen. All right, let's go to the book of Jude here. There's only one chapter in Jude. So let's see here. We're going to go to the part where it starts talking about, here we go. And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation. Now, and the interesting thing is when you look into the original Greek here, for habitation, it's not referring to a building. It's actually referring to their bodies. So again, Jude is actually telling you that Enoch is inspired, because he's actually pulling a concept that you could kind of find in Scripture, that angels take on mortal bodies when they come to earth, but this is like directly telling you they left their own bodies and they took on bodies of flesh, basically. If you look into the original Greek of this word habitation, it's the same word Paul uses, the same Greek word for a habitation, basically for this, that our bodies are a habitation for the set apart spirit. So this Greek word okaterion. So this is only two places in the New Testament. So the only other place is when it's referring to our bodies as a metaphorical house. Okay, so we take that context. This is talking about angels leaving their original esteemed bodies for mortal bodies of flesh when they went to Mount Hermon, the book of Enoch. And it says that they left their own Okaterion. He has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even, and this is why I wanted to read from Jude here, even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, he's comparing them, something similar here, giving themselves over to whoring and going after strange flesh. The strange flesh is similar because the men that they're lusting after that's in Lot's house right now are actually angels. So you had angels lusting after human women, and then you had these human men that were sodomites, that were homosexuals, lusting after these angels because they thought these angels were mortal men. So it's a very similar situation. So that's why I wanted to read Jude 1:7 there. And if you read the rest of the verse, it says, and going after the strange flesh are set forth an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. So very dangerous here. America should be learning a lesson here. Okay. So anyway, so it said, let's see, the house of your servant lodged there. Okay, it says they cried to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you tonight? So they really thought these angels were men. The angels looked like men. Bring them forth to us, and we will know them. That's a sexual term. And Lot went out to them to the gate, and the door he shut after them. And he said, I pray you, my brothers, do not do so wickedly. So Lot is trying to get them to repent here. And it says, behold, now I have 2 daughters. Now this, I'm sorry, Lot, I don't know why you're doing this. This ain't right. This I've always disagreed with. I'm sorry. Maybe Yahuwah and Yahusha will show me one day. You know, I mean, I don't see Yahuwah actually approving of this either. So, I mean, but Lot's about to give his daughters or suggest that his daughters, they take his daughters instead, which I don't know how that can be righteous, but
no.
Who have not known man, I would bring them to you, and you should do to them what pleases in your eyes. Only to these men do nothing. Now let's remember here, Lot's not like Abraham. Let's keep that in context here. You know, we don't know if he's really in covenant with the Father yet, so let's keep that in mind. Only to these men do nothing, because they have entered under the shadow of my dwelling. And they said, go in, however, and they said, one came to sojourn, and behold, he rightly rules right ruling. Now will we do worse to you than to them? And they prevailed against the man, against Lot, greatly, and came near to shatter the door. And the men put forth their hands and brought in Lot to be with them in the house, and shut the door. And the men who were at the gate of the house, they smote with blindness from little to the great, and they were wearied to find the gate. And the men said to Lot, whomsoever you has yet here, your son-in-law and your sons and your daughters and all that you have in the city, lead out from the place, for we will destroy this place, because their cry is great before Yahuwah, and Yahuwah has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went forth and spake with his sons-in-law, the takers of his daughters. Oh, okay. So that's kind of interesting. The takers of his daughters, are these the one? So that's kind of weird there. The takers of his daughters, I guess they took them in, they were betrothed, I'm guessing that's referring to, and said, arise.
I think it might be, Doug, I think it might be older daughters that were married.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out that phrase, what that's referring to.
These are, Lot had older daughters.
Okay.
You see other children that Lot had, one of which was killed by the people of the city. Helped the man that came to town that she wasn't supposed to help. But yeah, these were his older daughters who were already married off, sons-in-law. And this would also be the reason why his wife's heart was still back in Sodom and she didn't want to leave. She had children that were still being left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a warning by Yahusha. I'm glad you brought that up, Brother Tobiah, because that's warning by Yahusha about the days of Noah, that don't be like Lot's wife looking back.
Right. He who chooses son or daughter over me is not worthy of me.
Yeah. So the husbands of his older daughters and said, "Arise, come forth from this place, for Yahuwah will destroy the city." And he was as a trifler in the eyes of his sons-in-laws. Basically, other manuscripts will say that his sons-in-laws thought he was joking or jesting with them, and they didn't take him seriously. And it was as the morning rose that the angels were urgent upon Lot, saying, "Arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters, who are found trustworthy with you, lest you be smitten with the punishment of the city." Kind of like Revelations 18:4. Get out of her, my people, lest you partake of her plagues. It's very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he delayed, and the men laid hold of his hands and of the hand of his wife and the hand of his 2 daughters, for Yahuwah had mercy upon him. Okay, that's the correct word, people. Mercy, not grace. Just want to point that out. And they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it was when he had brought them without, he said, "Be merciful on your life. Look not behind you, and stand not in all the plain. Escape the mountain for salvation or deliverance, lest you perish." And Lot said to them, "Be entreated, O Yahuwah. Behold now, your servant has found mercy before you, and you have magnified your tubeness, which you have shown me in saving my life. And I cannot take refuge in the mountain, lest evil befall me and I die. But now this city is near to flee there, and it is small. Let me now escape there. Is it not small? And my life shall be sustained." And he said to him, "Behold," sorry, "I have accepted you in this thing also, in that I will not overthrow the city for which." Okay, let's see. Escape is not till you, therefore, in which you have prayed. Haste, escape therefore. I cannot do anything until you come there. Therefore be called the name of the city Zoar. Interesting. The sun had come forth upon the earth. Lot entered Zoar. Now this is interesting. You don't get this in other manuscripts. So it's talking about the sun had come forth upon the earth. That's kind of interesting. And Yahuwah rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah sulfur and fire from before Yahuwah from the heavens. Wow. And destroyed those cities and all the plain and all the dwellers in the cities and the herbage of the earth. And his wife looked behind her, and she became a statue of salt.
Okay, now that look behind her, that can't be translated properly, because
she definitely went to go back. I don't think it's just she looked behind her.
Because the key is that no matter can be done until he arrives in that city that he has to go to. And he arrived before the sun had risen, because see, Abraham wakes up before the sun has risen and goes to stand before our Father and sees the smoke burning from it. But yeah, so Lot actually arrives in that city without his wife. And the destruction doesn't take place until after he arrives, and his wife isn't turned into salt until after Lot has already arrived in that city without her.
Mm-hmm.
So, but here we see, I believe in the text we're used to reading, it says that she turned back before it ever tells us that he arrives in that city. Here it actually gives more of a proper chronological.
Yeah, I've noticed that too in the Masoretic text, the differences with that, the chronological order and stuff like that. Yeah. And Abraham ascended into the morning to the place where he had ministered in prayer before Yahuwah, and he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah and upon all the place of the plain land, and saw, and behold, the smoke of the land went up as smoke of a furnace. And it was when Yahuwah destroyed the cities of the plain that Yahuwah remembered Abraham and sent Lot from the midst of the overthrow. When he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt, and Lot went up from Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his daughters with him. For he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cavern, he and his 2 daughters. And the elders said to the younger, our father is aged, and there is no man in the earth to go unto us according to the way of all the earth. Come, we will pour father wine, and we'll lie with him, and raise up sons from our father. And they poured their father's wine in that night. And the elder went in and lay with her father, and he knew not in her lying down, nor in her rising up. And it was in the day which followed that the elder said to the younger, behold, I lay yesterday with the father. Let us give wine also in the night, and go thou in, lie with him. We will raise up sons from our father. And they gave that night also wine to their father. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he knew not in her lying down, nor in her rising up. And the 2 daughters of Lot conceived from their father, and the elder brought forth a son, and called his name Moab, and he is the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger also brought forth a son. She called his name Bar Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites unto this day. So that is the end of Genesis chapter 19. Very weird. This is definitely